Bun găsit la emisiunea Știință și Cunoaștere. În anul 1997, în urma unor analize sanguine pur întâmplătoare, am fost diagnosticat cu o afecțiune despre care aflam atunci pentru prima dată, hipercolesterolemie. La început am tratat-o cu pastile de nepăsare și indiferență, până când numeroase știri alarmante invadau mass media despre pericolul concentrațiilor ridicate de colesterol seric în sânge. Fiind confruntat la acea vreme și cu alte probleme de sănătate ce necesitau analize medicale periodice, la un moment dat, în anul 2001, am fost trecut pe o medicație permanentă, zilnică, cu unul din medicamentele ce făceau parte din clasa statinelor. La fiecare 3 luni mă prezentam pentru reactualizarea analizelor sanguine, observându-se variația concentrației acestor molecule considerate inamicul public numărul 1 al tuturor cauzelor maladiilor cardiace. Ce puteam ști la acea vreme despre colesterol? M-am conformat prescripției medicale și am luat aceste tablete timp de 10 ani la rând, fără să simt vreo îmbunătățire a stării mele de sănătate. Dimpotrivă, o stare generală de oboseală musculară începea să se resimtă tot mai acut după primii aproximativ 6 ani de tratament cu statine. Mi-au fost prezentate tot felul de explicații, de genul bolile de inimă nu manifestă dureri, colesterolul mărit le cauzează, tratamentul este de fapt preventiv, dar că cu toate acestea nu există garanții că nu voi face niciodată o boală de inimă. Mi se spunea că la acea vârstă, 35-37 de ani, eram prea tânăr ca să ignor pericolul și că trebuie neapărat să iau statine. Valorile colesterolului total, în toată perioada anilor 2001-2010, cât a durat tratamentul, oscilau în permanență între peste 200 de mg pe decilitru până la aproape 300 de mg pe decilitru și erau considerate valori de risc. Neavând nicio altă sursă de informare, dar ca să fiu sincer cu dumneavoastră, neavând la acea vreme niciun interes pentru știință și cunoaștere, am lăsat totul în mâinile destinului și a medicilor dezinformați la rândul lor de campania internațională de promovare a consumului de statine. În perioada 2001-2005, starea mea de sănătate se înrăutățea semnificativ și am fost obligat să adaug și alte clase medicamente pentru ameliorarea problemelor, precum antiinflamatoare, miorelaxante și vazodilatatoare, dar mi se spunea că aceste afecțiuni sunt nevindecabile și că voi avea simptome dureroase aproape în fiecare zi. În anul 2006 am rezolvat definitiv toate afecțiunile, totuși colesterolul avea încă concentrații mari. În perioada 2006 septembrie 2010 am continuat să iau statine, dar am avut șansa de a-l întâlni pe profesorul de biologie Bruce Lipton la București. A citit cartea mea și a înțeles imediat că nu mai aveam nevoie de statine, însă decizia a trebuit să o fac pe proprie răspundere și mi-o asum. Prin aceasta menționez că sub nicio formă, dumneavoastră ca telespectatori, nu puteți considera mărturia mea ca un înlocuitor al consultului medical de specialitate și sub nicio formă nu puteți asocia conținutul acestei emisiuni TV cu sfaturi medicale. Nu cu mult timp în urmă ați avut ocazia să-l revedeți pe biologul american Bruce Lipton cu ocazia difuzării unei emisiuni despre efectul lumii de miere. Din mesajele dumneavoastră știu că îl apreciați foarte mult și sper să vă pot oferi materiale cel puțin o dată pe an. În data de 26 mai 2017 am înregistrat un nou interviu cu Bruce Lipton, având durata de aproape 100 de minute, fapt care mi-a permis să-l pregătesc în 2 ediții consecutive ale emisiunii Știință și Cunoaștere. Cred că după o introducere atât de detaliată, bănuiți care va fi tema celor 2 episoade pe care le pregătim spre difuzare. Din cele peste 300 de episoade realizate până acum în prezent și uploadate pe internet, 3 au fost dedicate prezentării detaliate a problemei devenită între timp un mit, și anume colesterolul. Am aflat lucruri foarte interesante de la profesorii Carmen Socaciu, Adrian Pătruţ și Octavian Popescu, motiv pentru care am încheiat acest capitol crezând că am aflat totul și am înțeles totul despre aşa-zisul inamic public numărul 1, denumit colesterol seric total. Întâlnirea cu Bruce Lipton din luna mai 2017 mi-a adus o întreagă revelație și înțelegere a colesterolului. O să vă fac un scurt rezumat al unui anumit detaliu pe care profesorul Lipton îl va explica în continuare. Imaginați-vă că acest tub este o porțiune din arterele noastre. Tubul nu este elastic și nu se poate contracta sau expanda în funcție de modul în care variază presiunea sanguină. Variațiile mici sunt tolerate ușor, dar variațiile mari necesită adaptări. Prima și cea mai importantă lege a biologiei este corpul biologic se adaptează condițiilor de mediu. Dacă modific un parametru, precum tensiunea arterială, atunci corpul compensează și se adaptează. Pentru exemplul ales, acest tub își va mări diametrul prin accelerarea înmulțirii celulelor care formează pereții arteriali. Celulele conțin colesterol. Prin urmare, ficatul trebuie să sintetizeze, pentru că e o necesitate urgentă. Dar odată ce tubul și-a mărit diametrul, tensiunea arterială scade, deși volumul de sânge pompat este la fel de mare. Să presupunem acum că factorul generator care a determinat creșterea tensiunii sanguine a dispărut. Drept consecință, inima va pompa mai puțin sânge, deoarece un anume pericol, fals sau real, din mediul ambient a fost identificat și s-au anulat. Vasul de sânge tinde să se subțieze, deoarece curgerea sângelui nu seamănă celei de la robinetul de apă, așa că atunci când scade debitul prea mult, conductele de apă primesc aer în interior. Concluzia logică este aceea că, în cazul arterelor, scăderea tensiunii sanguine reprezintă din nou o modificare a condițiilor de mediu și corpul biologic trebuie să se adapteze noilor parametri. Aceasta înseamnă că, în loc de a da comandă de dilatare a vaselor sanguine sau de proliferare a celulelor, va da comandă de intrare în vasoconstricție, până când diametrul vasului este reglat la nivelul optim de presiune sanguină. Și, ca să ilustrez ce se întâmplă, iată acum strâng tubul ca să-i micșorez diametrul, dar în interior apare o cută care se desprinde ulterior de pe perete și care este imediat înconjurată de molecule de LDL, numit colesterol rău. Din acest moment al explicației mele apar mai multe posibilități. Profesorul Fossel mi-a relatat faptul că celulele degenerează în loc să intre în apoptoză, fapt care le face imposibil de eliminat și atunci se atașează de ele alte molecule, precum LDL, colesterol rău, care se va depune pe arteră pentru a preveni ruptura. Acest mecanism nu are nimic îngrijorător prin el însuși, cu o singură excepție, și anume trecerea foarte rapidă și foarte des de la o stare la alta, cu o viteză mai mare decât cea cu care corpul biologic poate să compenseze. Bruce Lipton ne spune că factorul esențial al acestor modificări fiziologice este stresul, dar mai sunt și alții cel puțin la fel de importanți. Hello and welcome, Dr. Bruce Lipton, to our Science and Knowledge TV program on TVR Cluj, Romania.
Christian, I am so happy to be with you, and I'm very excited by the amount of evolution of your own work. From the time we met years ago, you creating a whole new life for yourself and creating a whole new field of study in Romania. So I congratulate you on your efforts of helping change the world. Thank you so much for your work.
People are paying attention to you in great numbers, but when I'm telling that they need practice in order to change their lives, they just don't do it. Or they say that what I did is impossible or improbable. They do not accept the idea that without practice, nothing can happen.
Yes, that's an unfortunate, because there's the belief system that they got before they even knew about you. So the belief system they got in growing up, so people think they're victims because they say, I have no power. I've been programmed that I am not powerful. I don't control my health, that my health is controlled by other people like doctors and things like that. So if that's the belief they are programmed with, and then they see you do something different, their belief system says that can't be, because they don't believe in it. So it's very hard for them. They need a personal experience for themselves to believe it. Otherwise, they don't trust what other people are saying, because their history says, no, I am not a powerful person. I can't do those. So Christian can't do them either. You know, he must be magic. Okay.
I still remember our first meeting in 2010, and you promised me that you'll return back one day and have another conference in Cluj where we can also visit the famous botanic garden.
I am so looking forward to that opportunity, because part of your beautiful country hasn't really been changed by so much modern things that have ruined the community, that it's nice to go and see how things, held together for a long time, and the beauty of the environment in Romania is very welcoming. I look forward to seeing more and being there more and being with the people. That was one of my best lectures because the people in the audience was so looking forward to give some new information, and I said, I have some for you, and they said yes, and they loved the information. So that made my visit very exciting.
I am still hoping one day we may meet again.
It will happen, Christian. It will happen.
Another thing that I remember from 2010 meeting, which is very important because we had not yet talked about in details in our previous interviews, was that in September 2010 I was having high levels of seric cholesterol. But you look at my book and my personal biological transformation and immediately told me, don't take statins anymore. You don't need them.
Right.
And after 7 years, I have great health, no cardiac problems, so you were correct.
Well, it's interesting because I made a new update version of my book, The Biology of Belief. And in that new version, it specifically says that the whole belief about cholesterol is completely wrong. You're blaming the wrong thing when you say the cholesterol molecule is the problem. The problem is stress. And then cholesterol will cause a problem, but it won't do it unless there's stress. So the expression of cholesterol issues is really saying, no, something is stressful in your mind. The cholesterol shows up after, not it doesn't cause the problem. The cholesterol shows up after the problem has already begun. So we can't blame the cholesterol because the problem was already there. So we go back and then we find out stress is the cause of the problem with cholesterol. So, and recently the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, the FDA, which regulates drugs and things like that, they recently changed the guidelines of nutrition and said, it doesn't make a difference what the cholesterol content of the food you eat is. It doesn't make a difference the amount of cholesterol in the food, because when you eat the food and digest it, that cholesterol from the digestion doesn't become part of your body. So the diet cholesterol is not where the problem comes from. It comes from the cholesterol created by your own metabolism, your own beliefs. So they recently said no regulations on dietary cholesterol because it does not affect the body in a negative way.
Yes, but let's begin with the entire story about how this myth had been created and perpetrated for more than 25 years. Let's begin with the way in which cell membrane research helped rehabilitating the importance of cholesterol.
Yeah. Well, here's where the whole thing went wrong, is they were looking at patients with heart disease, and they would do a biopsy, and what they would find is where there was what they call a plaque, a building up of cells on the blood vessel. They said, oh, all those cells, they're filled with cholesterol. And they said, oh, only the plaque, the bad part of the disease, the cells have cholesterol. The normal cells don't have that. And so they said, oh, it must be the cholesterol that is causing the problem, because the bad cells in the blood vessel were filled with cholesterol. The problem is this. They immediately said, oh, the cholesterol causes it. We now find out that the cholesterol does not cause the problem. And in research I was involved with at the University of Pennsylvania, we were working with rats in a laboratory that have the same kind of atherosclerosis, the plaque in the blood vessel, as humans have. So we work with the rats. And what we found is this is amazing. We could inject cholesterol in the blood of the rats. We could put so much cholesterol in the blood that the blood wasn't red anymore. It was pink, because the cholesterol, it was filling up the blood. It was pink. It was so much cholesterol, okay? And we found out this. If it was just a rat and we put that much cholesterol in it, it would get atherosclerosis, cardiac problem, okay? But they found this, and this is the important clue. But if they gave that much cholesterol, but they gave the rat antihistamine, that no plaque would form. And so the point is simply this. The presence of the cholesterol did not cause the plaque when there was no histamine. So I said, but what's histamine? I say, histamine is a chemical released in stress. So when a person is in stress, that's when the cholesterol shows up in the cells. But what was the point? And the point was this. The stress damaged the cells, and the damaged cells picked up the cholesterol. So the point was this. The cholesterol wasn't in the beginning of the problem at all. The cholesterol came later. So trying to stop the cholesterol doesn't stop the problem because the problem occurred before the cholesterol was there. But they sell the drugs, and so many people buy the drugs. And let me give another point to your audience. It's very important. They have a number. They say, this is the right amount of cholesterol you should have in your body. I go, where did you get the number from? Where did you find that number, the amount? Oh, well, we measured everybody's cholesterol. We measured the whole population. And we said, in the middle, that is the level of cholesterol, so that would be the average. And I say, so whether it's you, Christian, or me, Bruce, or whatever it is, when the doctor looks at your cholesterol level, he looks at the number, and he says, where is it on the chart? Is it at average, or is it too much cholesterol? They measure it based on the average. And I go, that's the problem. There is no average human being. We're all different. You can't say the same number applies to everybody. It doesn't. There are people with higher cholesterol and they're perfectly healthy. And there are people with lower cholesterol and they're perfectly healthy. What was the point? Measuring cholesterol is not measuring health at all.
You said in the introductory part that cholesterol had been wrongly accused as guilty for being present in at least 35% patients with heart problems. So every time where you found a problem in a tissue, you also found cholesterol.
Yeah, but the question is, did the problem come before the cholesterol got in the cell, or did the cholesterol cause the problem? Those are two questions. And the research that we did showed that you could fill so much cholesterol in that rat's blood that it's actually white looking instead of red. And I say, that amount of cholesterol is crazy. But guess what? As I said, it didn't cause a problem if we put the antihistamine in. And I said, but why was that relevant? Because the antihistamine stops the stress. And when there was no stress, the cholesterol didn't make any difference in the blood at all. The amount of cholesterol was not even relevant in the blood. And now a problem that you brought up, Christian, because I'm very proud of your research, that you do a very good job.
Oh, did you read my book, The American 100 Pages Versions, Volume 1?
Yeah, that's why I'm very proud. Your book is getting translated. It's very important. Okay, so but the issue with cholesterol is this. We say cholesterol causes a problem, so they want to take away the cholesterol, but they didn't say a very important fact. The cholesterol is used for normal tissue, normal brain function. You need the cholesterol. It's part of the mechanism of the cell's brain. If you take away the cholesterol, the cell membrane doesn't work right, and that's when problem comes. So people that reduce the cholesterol too much, take statin drugs, try to reduce the cholesterol, it affects brain function. That's like a side effect. I go, it's not a side effect. You take the cholesterol out of the system, you automatically get brain function. That's a direct effect, not side effect. So the whole story is that the pharmaceutical company makes so much money, and I'm not talking $1 million, I'm talking $1 billion on cholesterol statin drugs. And the idea was they make so much money, they don't care if the cholesterol is a problem or not. They're still making the money. And so the idea is this. We know the cholesterol statin drugs interfere with the nervous system and the function of the brain, and we know that the cholesterol is not the cause of the problem. So the whole idea of taking statins is actually toxic. Side effects will destroy the system. So save your life, stop the statin.
What is the role of cholesterol in sustaining fluidity of the cell membrane?
Well, you have the membrane is mainly a lot of fat, lipids, okay? And the reason is this, fat is like a barrier. If you put water above fat, it doesn't go through the fat, okay? So if you make a membrane with fat, then the outside water of the environment doesn't go in unless the system wants it to go in. So it controls the environment, okay? But the lipids that make up the membrane, phospholipids, are like butter. I mean when you warm up the butter, it's a liquid, and when the butter gets cooler, it gets solid. Well, if you have a membrane only made out of phospholipids, then the structure sometimes will be more solid and sometimes more liquid based on the temperature, what's going on. The membrane can't go up and down in solid and fluid like, melted butter and solid butter. It has to stay at the same place. It has to be liquid enough for the membrane to flex and move so the membrane can bend. And I say, if you don't have cholesterol, the membrane is rigid like hard butter. But when you put cholesterol in, it allows the membrane to stay soft. So the operation of the membrane requires the cholesterol to prevent what are called phospholipids, the main molecule, from freezing and becoming solid, which would stop the function. So cholesterol is like antifreeze in the membrane to keep it loose and smooth. And it's also involved with controlling the flow of information. So cholesterol has two major functions in the membrane. I say, well, this is important. Why? The membrane is the brain of the cell. If the membrane's not working, the cell is going to die or be sick. And so I say, well, then what are the conditions that help the membrane? And number one is they must have cholesterol or they won't work right, because then the membrane gets too solid and the information isn't flowing anymore. It stops the flow. And that's like make your brain get knocked out if you have no cholesterol in the membrane. It just doesn't work. So it's vital. Cholesterol is vital. So the idea that everyone, cholesterol is dangerous. I go, no, cholesterol is not dangerous. You can't live without cholesterol. You need cholesterol. Okay?
You wrote in your book about the integral membrane protein, the IMP.
Yes.
How does IMP works in the cell membrane, and why we cannot have a membrane formed exclusively of phospholipids?
Okay. As I said, the lipids in the membrane are like butter. So imagine I have a bread and butter sandwich, okay? And I drop some dye, some color fluid on top of the bread. The bread soaks up the dye. But I say, did the colored dye go through the sandwich and come out the other side? And I say, no, because when it hits the butter, it can't go anymore. So the membrane is a barrier. It separates the inside from the outside. And the reason is very important. The proteins in our body that give us our structure are also the things that are like enzymes that create the functions. When you want to control a protein, you have to control the pH. Is it acid or base? You have to control the temperature. You have to control the amount of salt in a solution to have the protein work. I say, if you don't have a membrane, you can't control any of this. It's just like being in a pond or a lake. You can't control what goes on in a lake, but if you put a membrane around yourself, then you can control what's inside. So the function of the membrane is to create what we call a domain, an environment that can be controlled. Now the problem is this. The membrane with just phospholipids, It's like a bread and butter sandwich. Nothing can get in or out. I go, well, you can't have life like that. The reason is this: life, you have to take food in and information and chemicals. You have to take it in to the cell. And when the cell is operating, the waste products have to be put out of the cell. Well, if you have a membrane that can't let things in and out, then by definition, you can't have life. You can't get food in, you can't get waste out, no life. So the membrane is a non-conductor. It's an insulator. It prevents things from coming across. I say, well, then you can't have life. I say, but if we put the proteins, which are little machines like, into the membrane, we can control what comes in and we can control what goes out. So I can have proteins that are called channels, like a sodium channel, a potassium channel, a glucose channel. So I say glucose channel? Yeah, there's a protein that has a hole in it. And when it's built into the membrane, glucose can go through that channel and come out and come inside the cell. I also have channels that take things from inside and let them go out. So when I put the proteins in the membrane, it allows some things to come across and some things to get out. It doesn't let everything come in, and it doesn't let everything go out. It only lets certain things. So I say, wait, no proteins in the membrane, non-conductor. When I put proteins in the membrane, it doesn't conduct everything, only certain things. So definition, when proteins are in the membrane, it's called a semiconductor. And semiconductor is the chip, the
Only
computer
one
chip.
way conducting, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so some set of proteins control what comes in and go out. But then I say, but I don't want everything to come in and go out on its own. I want to make sure if I want glucose, then I'll open up the channel and the glucose will come through. If I don't want glucose, I close the channel and nothing comes through. So I say, oh, the channel can be open. The channel can be closed, the protein. I say, what controls that? I say, there's another protein in the membrane called the receptor. The receptor reads the environment. I say, the skin of you and I, all of us, our skin is a barrier that the inside is not connected to the outside. So bacteria don't come in and things like that because I have a skin that's a protector, okay? But I also have receptors that read the environment. And where are your receptors right now, Christian? You have eyes, ears, nose,
Yes.
taste, touch. I said, your receptors are built into the membrane called skin. I go, the skin of the cell has receptors, but they're small proteins. Same thing, though. They see light. They smell chemicals. They can read the temperature. I say, okay, so here's now how it finally works. The membrane is a non-conductor. It doesn't let things in. But I put proteins called channels inside, and the channel can let the things go through. So now it's a semiconductor. But I say, yeah, but I don't want the channels open all the time. So I say, I put a receptor protein. When it reads the right signal, the receptor protein couples to the channel, and that causes the channel to open and close. So the environment and the signals are opening and closing the transport of information into the cell and out of the cell. So I say, so the membrane, we said, is a semiconductor because it has what are called receptors and channels, okay, built into the membrane, integral membrane proteins. I say, there's another word for a receptor, and it's called gate. A gate is a device that reads a signal and controls the output. So I now give you the definition of the membrane we just said. A membrane is a semiconductor. It's actually a crystal structure because the lipids making the membrane are all lined up like soldiers. So when you look at the lipids in the membrane, they're all lined up. So that's like a crystal. So we say the membrane is a crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. I go, that information, I know that information, but it's not in biology. I say, the same definition, crystal semiconductor with gates and channels, is the definition of a computer chip.
The comparison is very good as a metaphor because often in our lives we try to duplicate nature in some ways. So we have a better understanding when using metaphors.
Then the membrane is a carbon-based computer because the structure is made out of hydrocarbons, carbohydrates and things, okay? Carbon. The membrane or chip in a computer is a silicon-based chip. So organic chip, carbon-based chip, a computer is silicon-based chip, but they have the same structure. So it's not a membrane is like a computer. The same structure and the same function says a membrane is the same as a computer. When you type on the computer, you hit the keys on the computer. And then the keys connect to the information inside the computer. I go, when the environment is sending signals to my membrane, the signals touch the surface of the cell, and there are receptors which are like the keys on the computer. So the signal from the environment types on the surface of the cell, and when you push the receptors, they engage the functions just like the keys on the computer engage the programs. So here's the point is very important.
Okay.
The point is this, and it comes to your last point, so I'll summarize that. And the last point was this. The human membrane, the membrane of all cells, is the equivalent of a computer chip. It's an information processor. It takes environmental information and turns it into cell behavior. It processes information, okay? Then we find out, as you said, and that's why I wanted to come back to this, the technologies that humans use provide the same things that the biology already had the technology. The technology has intelligence. The body has pumping systems, blood being pumped through, filtering systems, and creates energy. It does everything our technology does. But here's the point. The technology in the cell is evolutionary far better than the technologies that we make. So the evolution of humans, if they would study the technology of the cell and reproduce it, then we would be more efficient and have better lives. And there's a science that studies the nature of the cell and tries to make technology from it, and it's called biomimicry. It's a special word, biomimicry. The word mimic means to copy. So biomimicry is a science where you copy how a cell does something, and then you try to reproduce that, make the same technology. So we can advance our technology by studying the primitive cell, because they did all the technology before we did, and better.
Let me go back to cholesterol, and I understood it creating a kind of space between phospholipids molecules in order to prevent jellification. So it is like an antigel molecule or a glue.
It's more, as I said, it's more like antifreeze. You don't want the water in your car to freeze. You put in some antifreeze, and that keeps it from freezing. The cholesterol is like antifreeze for the membrane. Without the cholesterol, the membrane's more rigid, like frozen. When you put cholesterol in, it's softened. And when you soften it, the information flows differently, okay? And there's something, I just will bring it up because you're focusing on cholesterol. There are little islands of cholesterol that float in the membrane, okay? And these are called cholesterol plaques that are floating. I say, well, why do they float through the membrane? I say, because stuck in them are proteins that carry out a function. And if I take a group of proteins and stick them in the cholesterol, I can move the whole group, like moving a factory. Put all the factory on the plaque and then move the plaque somewhere else, and then the factory could be somewhere else. So cholesterol does two things. One, it keeps the membrane soft. And two, it can control the distribution of the proteins inside the membrane. So it's very important in the computation process of the membrane. If the membrane doesn't have cholesterol, the function is completely disrupted. The function won't work anymore without cholesterol. And that's where the problem of not having enough cholesterol is actually a problem worse than having too much cholesterol.
We already know in our days the antihistaminic pills, and in some allergies they are effective. But what exactly is the role of the hormone histamine in our body? Why do we need this?
It does two main things. Number one, a blood vessel carries blood. Inside the blood vessel are the cells, the red blood cells and the white blood cells, okay? And also in the blood are antibodies, which are big proteins floating in the blood. So inside the blood vessel, the tube, inside the tube are the cells and the antibodies. When you just have normal growth, the nutrients that provide for growth leak out of the capillaries. And when the nutrient, because they're very small, nutrients are very small, and like a single amino acid, a single sugar, monosaccharide, or a single fat, monolipid, small one. These are the building blocks of the cell. Well, as the blood is going down the tube, the building blocks that are small can leak out and then nourish the cells around. That's what capillaries do. The blood cells don't come out. Just the nutrients come out. And they squeeze between the cells and leak out, okay? But if you have an infection, you want to have the white cells come out of the blood vessel. You want the antibodies to come out of the blood vessel. Antibodies are too big to go through the little spaces that the nutrients go through. So I say, wait, if the white cells are inside the blood vessel and the antibodies are inside the blood vessels and they can't come out because of the structure of the blood vessels closed, how can I have an immune response? And I go, the hormone histamine, when released at the blood vessel, causes the blood vessel cells to pull apart. Big holes occur in the blood vessel when histamine. It causes the blood vessels to leak. And what I say, well, what happens when it leaks? I say, well, the antibodies come out, number one, because they couldn't come out before. Now the antibodies are where the infection is, because when the histamine is working in normal situation, it only affects the blood vessel where the infection is. So only at the site of the infection, the blood vessel cells pull apart. Big holes occur between the blood vessel. This lets the proteins out that are the antibodies that are going to help fight. But they also let the white blood cells out. The white blood cells are like amoeba. When the holes form in the blood vessel, the white blood cells come out and then they go fight the infection. So here's the point. There are two structures that a blood vessel can be in. Structure number one, for growth, for nutrition. The cells of the blood vessel are close together. And as a result, only small little things can leak out, okay? That's for growth. But for protection, I need the white blood cells to come out. I need the antibodies to come out. So in protection, the blood vessels open up and make little gaps, spaces. And that's where the immune cells and the antibodies come out. So I say, in growth, the blood vessel is closed and only nutrients come out. But when you have a protection response, histamine causes the blood vessel cells to open up and let the white blood cells come out and the antibodies. So I say, a blood vessel can be closed or open. When it's closed, that's when growth is occurring. When it's open, that's when immune response is occurring. I say, and what controls close or open? I say, histamine causes the blood vessel to open. So wherever there's an infection in the body, the histamine will cause the blood vessels to open up and let out the immune cells and the antibodies for protection, okay? When the inflammation is over, the blood vessels close back up and then growth begins again. So I say, so when the blood vessels are open, extra fluid leaks out. And I go, yeah, and that's why you get swelling. Let's say an insect, a mosquito, bites you, and then you get a little lump on the skin where the bite. I say, what's the lump? I say, where the mosquito bite was, the cells release histamine to fight the infection from the mosquito. So wherever the bite is, the blood vessels underneath there, guess what? They open up and the fluid leaks out. And then there's a swelling on the surface because extra fluid is in there, okay? And that just shows you what happens when the blood vessel opens up. And I say, in a normal situation, this only occurs where the infection is or where the mosquito bit you or wherever the problem is. But there's abnormal situation. Abnormal situation is when a signal, like an allergy signal, an allergy to peanuts or an allergy to something, when that signal comes into the body, that's a mistake of the biology to make a response. There's nothing, peanuts don't cause damage. It's just a mistake in the immune system that thinks peanuts cause damage. So when the peanut molecules show up, the immune system says, oh, we have infection. But the problem is the peanut molecules are so small that they go throughout the entire body. I eat a peanut butter sandwich. The peanut molecules are so small, they go all over the body. I say, what happened? I say, the blood vessels all over the body at the same time are opening because histamine is responding to the peanut molecule everywhere at the same time. So your body gets covered with lumps. We call them hives, or the bumps that occur. And I say, what happens? I say, you eat peanuts and you're allergic to them, all over the body at once. The body is leaking, the blood cells are leaking the fluid because histamine opened up the cells. You're getting these lumps. And I say, what happens then? I go, when too much blood leaks out of the blood vessel at the same time, when all those lumps that are all over you from eating the peanuts represent opening in a blood vessel and the fluid leaking in hives, too much leakage causes a heart attack. There's no pressure left because the fluid leaked out. There's nothing for the heart to pump and push the fluid. There's no fluid, so the heart's beating, but there's no movement, no fluid. That causes death. And we call that in science anaphylaxis. That is a result of an allergic response where histamine opens up blood vessels over the entire body in response to an allergen. And the leakage of that much blood at one time causes the blood vessels to collapse and the heart has no function, can't push. And that's when people die from an allergic reaction. Histamine, too much, causes leakage too much, which stops the heart from functioning.
In this regard, is there any connection between histamine and atherosclerosis?
100%. Because, thank you for asking, Christian. Because there's two functions. I just said one function. I said histamine causes the blood vessels to open up, and that's where we get the swelling when you get infection. But number two, because a histamine signal, it's like an air raid siren. The siren goes off, and everyone knows, there's a problem coming, right? When histamine is released in the body, it's like an air raid siren. It makes a signal to tell the body that trouble is going to happen. And what the first thing you need to do is prepare to repair the damage of anything, whether you got cut, whether you got hit, whether bugs bite you and damage it. When there's damage, histamine affects the response, but it also causes the stem cells to divide and make more cells. I say, why should you have more cells? I say, well, if you damage it, you have to rebuild it. So histamine is saying damage is occurring, and it deals with the immune system to stop the damage. And at the same time, histamine tells the cells, well, we better divide more because we have to repair the damage. You got what I'm talking about? So histamine does two things. Causes inflammation, but it also causes cells to divide and prepare for repairing the damage. Now, you want to know how atherosclerosis works? It's simple. If the pressure in the blood vessel stays high all the time, then the blood vessel wants to make a bigger blood vessel so the pressure isn't so great. And to make a bigger blood vessels, you have to divide the cells that make up the wall of the blood vessel. You want a bigger blood vessel, you need more cells. So if the pressure is high for a period of time, the signal is, oh my goodness, we need to make the blood vessel bigger, and the blood pressure going through the blood vessel, it causes the cells to read the pressure. So a blood vessel, the lining of the blood vessel, the cells lining, have like gauges. The pressure above them, they could read. If the pressure stays too high, the blood vessel cell says, oh, I got to divide because we need to make a bigger blood vessel to reduce the pressure. But here's the problem. If the pressure is due to stress, then I mean, sometimes during the day, the stress causes the pressure to be greater. And let's say at night when you're relaxing, the blood pressure goes back down. So I say, what does that mean? I say, well, during the day when you're under blood pressure, high blood pressure, that causes the cells to divide, saying we need a bigger blood vessel. But at nighttime, when the pressure is low, the cells go, we don't need a bigger blood vessel. This is working okay. So I say, what happened? You caused more cells to divide because you thought you were going to make the blood vessel bigger, but because stress changes up and down based on the day, there are times where the blood vessel says, I don't need those cells I just made. So I say, well, what happens to the new cells you just made when the blood pressure was high? I say, that's when they form what is called an atherosclerotic plaque, a plaque, a pile of cells.
Amazing.
I say, so the pile of cells that are causing atherosclerosis didn't get there by accident. The pile of cells got there because under high pressure of stress, the blood vessel says, make more cells. But when the stress was gone during the night, blood vessel says, I don't need more cells. So all the new cells that were made just make a pile. And that pile becomes a plaque. And if you don't use that plaque, the cells begin to degenerate. And that's when the cholesterol shows up. It shows that the plaque that you built, we're not using it. And so the degenerating cells build up cholesterol. But the only reason they built up the cholesterol, as I said, is because you created a population of cells and then you have no use for them. When you're not stressed, you have no use. So this is what causes the atherosclerotic plaque, the stress. And when the plaque builds up and you can't use the cells, then the cells at some point begin to degenerate. And the sick degenerating cells are the ones that pick up the cholesterol. So when you look at a section, a biopsy, histology, and you see a plaque in the blood vessel, the cholesterol in there is just showing you that those cells were sick. That's what it showed you. The cholesterol didn't make them sick. The cholesterol showed up after they were sick. Okay?
Amazing, amazing. I never understood this highly important detail until now. I just couldn't see it until now.
It's just the idea the system is given information when they're unstressed, they have to change. And then later in the same day, that same person is not in stress, they're relaxing. And then it's like the blood vessel says, we don't need to change, everything is okay. So sometimes you need to change, sometimes you don't need to change. And that's what causes the problem. When a person is normal, the blood vessel, the pressure stays the same. Within range, it stays the same. But when a person's under stress, blood vessel pressure goes up and down every day because of the stress.
You also wrote in your special chapter, which you had sent me on email and impressed me so much, you also wrote about a so-called magic bullet called statins. What are the statins and who invented them?
Pharmaceutical company. The pharmaceutical company found out by accident that statin drugs affect cholesterol. And when the pathology said, oh, cholesterol is a problem, the pharmaceutical company says, I have a drug that affects the cholesterol. So they said, we can use that drug. It wasn't even designed for cholesterol. It was designed for something else. But they said, if cholesterol is a problem, this drug will work. And then, as I said, they make a number. and they say, if you have too much cholesterol above the number, you need to buy the drug. You know what's interesting is they make the number, and then every 10 years, they lower the number, saying, no, the cholesterol's still too high. And every time they lower the number, 1,000,000 new patients that had lower cholesterol before, now they say, oh no, that's dangerous. So they get a 1,000,000 new patients, which is $1 billion more. Every time they lower the level of cholesterol, they say is standard, that makes more patients buy statins. So every 10 years, the drug companies change the level to make $1 billion more just by change the number. I change the number of what is the cholesterol level today. I say, that's the number. Tomorrow I change the number. Guess what? I get 1,000,000 new patients just by changing the number. So the drug company, we can make more money by selling more statin. And how do you sell more statin? You lower the cholesterol level, so more people actually now have cholesterol above the level, and now they buy the prescription for statin. So changing the cholesterol level is a pharmaceutical way of selling more drugs. The cholesterol is still the same. It's always been. They just changed the number. But every time they change the number, $1 billion in new drug sales.
But now, as we begin to understand the amazing mechanism of the creation of the arterial plaques and how our cell really works, divide or entering apoptosis, and this is the way this mechanism is adjusting the vessel's diameter in order to expand or contract, well, this is amazing. But now we know for sure that the pharmaceuticals are wrongly fighting against a biomarker, just like, metaphorically speaking, the driver of his own car blames the oil indicator for the consuming of the oil in the tank. And let me show you this. Consider this battery as the oil tank of the car, and here is the indicator. If I touch this here, I'll have a signal. A red light, and this shows me the status of the oil tank. But if I find against the signal by taking a drug for treating the symptoms and not the causes, it is just like covering this signal with a sheet or something, and now I don't see the signal. I don't see it because I covered, so I don't have the symptoms.
The same thing applies, the same reason applies to the use of what are called SSRI drugs like Prozac. They say, oh, Prozac, your levels of certain chemicals like dopamine or serotonin are not right when you're like depressed. And they say, well, just put more serotonin in and you'll fix the system, so give the people serotonin. And it's like, the serotonin level is not because of the cell can't make serotonin. The cell can make serotonin when it wants. The level of serotonin changes based on our stresses and our depression. The source isn't the chemical problem. The source was first the mind. Then the chemical problem reflects the change in the mind's function. So you say, oh, well, I'm not going to deal with the mind. I'm just going to put the Prozac in. And I say, yeah, but the Prozac, the SSRI chemistry, that isn't where the problem is. The problem is above in the mind that controls the chemistry. And you're going to try to say, well, I'm going to forget the mind. I'm just going to put the chemistry in. And guess what? A fact, in the research on Prozac and drugs like Prozac, Paxil, that's another drug like that, research revealed that these drugs are no different than a sugar pill. They have no effect because that's not where the problem is. The problem wasn't in the concentration of the SSRI. The problem was in who controls the serotonin. Just because I say I want to have more serotonin, so I'll take the drug, go, no. That's not up to you. That's up to the nervous system. The nervous system controls the cells. And so the relevance is this: if there's a shortage of serotonin in the system, it's not because cells can't make serotonin. They can make all the serotonin they want. It just means that the program says, don't make the serotonin. So you say, oh, I'm going to just put the serotonin in. I go, that drug doesn't go into the system the way you said it does. It doesn't work. And that's why we now have the scientific truth that Prozac is the same as a sugar pill in regard to its ability to help people. It doesn't. Again, it's like cholesterol, statin drugs, SSRI drugs. These are drugs the pharmaceutical company pushes on everybody, and more or less they are causing problems more than they are healing problems. As a matter of fact, the director of the National Institute of Mental Health, that's like the big department of mental health in the United States, about last year said that these drugs are actually making the problem worse in people because they don't help them. And in fact, they avoid people dealing with the problem because people say, oh, it's not my problem. I just need to take a drug. And the research says, no, it is your problem. It comes from your control. And the control is the mind. And mind can cause anything. And it can fix anything. And the mind can damage anything. So when we keep trying to put drugs in, and the problem started up in the mind, you didn't fix the problem. You're working below the mind, down here. The problem is up here. So the biggest issue is dealing with the mind, not the chemistry of the body.
Let me change the tape. Data viitoare vom discuta despre alte aspecte legate de colesterol, revizuiri și reașezări ale nivelelor maxime considerate a fi periculoase, ce efecte au avut aceste nivele asupra profiturilor companiilor farmaceutice și ce puteți face pentru a vă informa corect, ce puteți face pentru a preveni cu adevărat apariția prematură a bolilor degenerative și a bolilor de inimă. Fiți alături de noi data viitoare la o nouă întâlnire cu Știință și Cunoaștere.